Hey everyone, before we start, remember to watch closely, it's a story that will touch your heart. Meet James, a single dad living in a small, worn-down apartment in the city. Life hasn't been kind to him. 2 years ago, he lost his daughter, Lily, to a sudden illness. The pain and emptiness never truly went away. Every corner of his apartment, every quiet night, reminded him of what he had lost. He works long hours at a modest job just to pay the bills, and when he comes home, silence greets him instead of laughter. One rainy evening, as James walked home from a late shift, he noticed something unusual under the stairwell of his building. A small, shivering figure. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal seeking shelter from the storm, but then he saw her face. It was a little girl, no more than 7 or 8, huddled in a thin coat that couldn't possibly protect her from the rain. Her eyes were wide with fear, exhausted, and pleading. Without thinking, James approached her. He held out his umbrella and knelt down. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to be out here alone," he said softly. She flinched at first, but slowly, hesitantly, she took a step toward him. Something stirred in James' heart, a feeling he hadn't experienced since Lily passed. A spark of fatherly instinct, a need to protect, to care, it pulled him closer to her. He led her into his apartment. It wasn't much, just a single room with a small kitchen and a bed, but tonight, it would be enough. He made a small blanket on the floor for her. The little girl curled up, still silent and wary. James watched her, feeling a mix of sorrow and hope. He remembered the nights he'd spent alone after Lily was gone, crying into his pillow, staring out the window, wondering if life would ever be kind again. And now, here was this little girl, broken and lost, sitting in his home, depending on him for safety. James prepared a simple meal, warm soup, a piece of bread, some milk. He set it in front of her, but she didn't move. She just stared at it, her little hands folded tightly. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to eat if you're not ready. I just want you to feel safe." Finally, the girl reached for the spoon. Her movements were slow and uncertain, like she hadn't been allowed to feel cared for in a long time. As she took her first bite, James felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years. And right here, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for daily videos, and comment below telling me which country you're watching from. It helps me connect with viewers from all over, and I love reading your messages. That night, James sat by the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. The girl slept on the floor beside him under the blanket he'd made. He realized that sadness could coexist with hope. Even in the darkest moments, life could surprise you. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "You're safe here. I promise." James couldn't sleep. He thought about Lily, about the daughter he lost, and about the little girl beside him. She hadn't spoken a word, hadn't even given him her name, but he already cared for her deeply. For the first time in a long time, he felt a tiny glimmer of purpose again. He didn't know her story. He didn't know why she was out there alone in the rain. But he knew one thing: tonight, she wouldn't face the world alone. And that was enough. Life is unpredictable. It's unfair, often cruel, but sometimes, it gives you moments like this, moments where broken souls meet, where sadness meets kindness, and where hearts begin to heal in ways you never expected. James closed his eyes that night, listening to the soft breathing of the little girl beside him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if her story would be as heartbreaking as his own. But for now, he had a chance to give her warmth, safety, and care. In that small, dim apartment, amidst the quiet hum of the rain, 2 lonely souls found each other. 2 hearts, wounded by life, began a journey neither of them expected. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where the little girl begins to open up, and the true depth of her sorrow is revealed. The morning after James had taken the little girl into his care, the apartment felt unusually quiet. She had curled up in the corner on the blanket he had made, still shivering slightly from the rain and cold. James watched her, silently wishing he could take away the fear and pain he saw in her eyes. He didn't know her name yet, and she hadn't said a word since he found her. Still, he felt a strong protective instinct, one he hadn't felt since Lily was alive. He moved quietly to the kitchen and prepared a small breakfast, warm oatmeal, some sliced fruit, and a cup of milk. He set it down on the small table, hoping she would eat. She looked at it with a mixture of suspicion and hunger, slowly moving closer, but not yet trusting him enough to eat in his presence. James sat across from her, trying to think of words that might comfort her. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to talk or eat if you're not ready. I just want you to feel safe here." The little girl lowered her eyes and whispered a soft, barely audible thank you. James felt his heart tighten. Even the smallest word from her was enough to stir something he hadn't felt in years. It reminded him of Lily, of the way she had always smiled before school, how her laughter had filled the rooms. That laughter was gone now, but somehow, this little girl's quiet acknowledgement gave him a hint of hope, a tiny flicker that maybe he could help someone else heal. After breakfast, James decided to take her outside for a short walk. The city streets were wet from the rain, and the air was crisp. He held out his hand, and this time, she hesitated only briefly before taking it. Her fingers were cold and small in his, and he gently squeezed them, letting her know he wouldn't let go. As they walked, he tried to talk to her. "Do you want to tell me your name?" he asked softly. She shook her head and looked away. Her silence spoke volumes of fear, mistrust, and perhaps past experiences that had left her wary of adults. James understood. He remembered Lily's first day of school, how nervous she had been, and how he had had to coax her with patience and kindness. He realized now that trust takes time, especially for someone who had clearly suffered. This is a great place to engage your audience. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and comment below telling me which country you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you while we continue this journey. After the walk, they returned to the apartment. James noticed the little girl lingering by the window, watching the world outside. She seemed smaller than ever, her frame tense and fragile. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to be scared here. You're safe now." For a long time, she didn't respond. Then, in a quiet voice, almost swallowed by the hum of the city, she asked, Will you stay?" James felt tears prick at his eyes. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yes. I'll stay. You won't be alone." Evening came, and the apartment filled with the soft glow of a single lamp. The little girl sat quietly, eating a small dinner that James had prepared. Each bite was careful, measured, as if she were learning to trust that food could be safe, that people could be kind. After dinner, James tried a new approach. He sat down with a notebook and some colored pencils, gently encouraging her to draw. "You can draw anything you want," he said. "There's no wrong here. Just colors and shapes. No one will see unless you want them to." Slowly, hesitantly, she picked up a pencil. At first, the lines were shaky, uncertain. But then, she began to draw a small house, a tree, and a little figure inside. The strokes were raw, imperfect, but filled with meaning. James watched silently, realizing that even in her fear, she was trying to express herself, to connect. As she drew, he noticed the tiny smiles that occasionally flickered across her face. Those smiles were fleeting, but they were proof that trust could be built. He remembered Lily's love for drawing, and a bittersweet pang filled him. Losing Lily had been unbearable, but now, he had a chance to help another child, and perhaps find some healing for himself along the way. Night fell, and the girl, whom James had started calling Emma in his mind, curled up on the blanket. He placed a small hand on her back, feeling the warmth, the fragility, and the quiet vulnerability. He whispered softly, "Good night, Emma. Sleep safely." The first night had passed with minimal tears, but James knew the journey had just begun. He understood that Emma's pain was deep, perhaps deeper than he could imagine. Yet, he also knew that love, patience, and a safe environment could slowly help her rebuild what life had taken away. Later, sitting alone by the window with a cup of tea, James reflected on the day. The rain had stopped, leaving a fresh, clean scent in the air. The city lights reflected off the wet streets, a reminder that even after storms, life continues. He thought about Lily, about the way her laughter used to fill the rooms, and he felt a bittersweet ache. The loss would never truly leave him, but perhaps, helping Emma could bring a sense of purpose to his grief. Quick engagement moment. If this story is touching your heart, remember to like, subscribe for daily emotional stories, and comment where you're watching from. I love hearing from you, and it helps the channel reach more people who need stories like this. Emma stirred in her sleep that night, murmuring softly, almost as if she were repeating the word home. James leaned back in his chair, feeling both heartache and hope. The apartment was quiet now, filled only with the gentle rhythm of her breathing. He realized that sadness could be shared, that grief could be softened when someone else needed care as much as he did. Emma's presence had reminded him that life doesn't stop giving chances, even when it seems unbearably cruel. James knew tomorrow would be another challenge. Emma might not speak, might not eat, might retreat again into silence. But he also knew that each small moment of trust, each small smile or word, was a victory. He would celebrate them quietly, in the way a broken heart learns to cherish tiny sparks of hope. As he finally lay down to sleep, James whispered a promise to himself and to Emma: "I will protect you. I will care for you. You will never be alone again." And in that small, quiet apartment, two lives, both touched by loss and sorrow, had begun a fragile, tender journey together. The first steps were small, uncertain, and filled with silent tears, but they were steps toward healing, toward connection, toward hope. Tomorrow, James would continue to build that trust. He would continue to provide warmth, comfort, and understanding, hoping that one day Emma could smile freely, without fear. And maybe, just maybe, both of them could start to heal from the wounds life had inflicted. The rain had stopped, but the echoes of the storm remained. And in those echoes, James and Emma found a fragile sense of companionship, the quiet beginnings of a bond that could grow stronger, one day at a time. The days after James brought Emma into his home felt like a strange mixture of relief and lingering sorrow. Every time he looked at her, he was reminded of how fragile life could be, how deeply a young heart could carry pain. Emma had begun to eat more steadily, though still silently, and she occasionally allowed him to sit beside her as she drew or quietly watched the city streets through the window. But the silence was heavy. Emma's quietness was not simply shyness, it was a shield. Every glance, every movement hinted at a past filled with fear, neglect, and unanswered questions. James often found himself staring at her, wishing he could step back into her memories and take the pain away. He realized that her suffering mirrored his own grief in some ways. He had lost Lily, his daughter, in a sudden and cruel twist of fate. Emma, it seemed, had lost much more than just her home. She had lost trust, security, and perhaps a sense of belonging. One afternoon, James decided to bring out a small set of storybooks. He wanted Emma to feel comforted by tales of other children, of adventures and hope, if only for a few moments. As he sat down beside her on the couch, he opened the first book and began to read in a soft, steady voice. Emma didn't look up at first. Her small hands were folded in her lap, and her eyes stared blankly at the floor. But gradually, she began to follow the illustrations, tracing the bright colors with her gaze. And then, for a brief moment, she allowed her hand to rest near his on the couch. James felt his chest tighten with a mixture of relief and sorrow. It was the smallest gesture, yet it meant the world. He remembered Lily sitting beside him in the evenings, her head resting on his shoulder as he read aloud. The memories were bittersweet, bringing both tears and warmth. That evening, after Emma had finished drawing, James set up a small puzzle for her. It was a simple wooden set, bright and colorful, designed for children. At first, she seemed hesitant, unsure how to begin. But James knelt beside her, gently guiding her hand toward the first piece. As the puzzle began to take shape, a faint smile appeared on her lips. It was small, fleeting, but it was a smile nonetheless. James let out a quiet breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. It was a reminder that healing doesn't happen all at once, it comes slowly, piece by piece, just like the puzzle. Here's a moment to connect with everyone watching. If this story is touching your heart, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for daily emotional stories ***, and comment below telling me which country you're watching from. I love hearing from you while we continue Emma and James' journey. As the night fell, James noticed Emma staring at the ceiling, her small frame curled beneath the blanket. He remembered the nights when he would stay awake after Lily's illness, listening to the quiet house, feeling helpless and alone. He knew that Emma must be feeling something similar, carrying her own invisible burdens. He moved closer and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Emma," he whispered, "I know you've been through a lot. I can't imagine everything you've felt, but I want you to know, you're safe here. You're not alone." For several minutes, she didn't respond. And then, in a voice so soft it barely reached him, she murmured, I was scared." James felt a lump in his throat. "I know, sweetheart. I know," he said, trying to steady his voice. "But you don't have to be scared anymore. Not here, not with me. You're safe, and I won't let anything hurt you." Her small hand reached up, almost tentatively, and rested over his. It was a fragile connection, but it was a connection nonetheless. James realized that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt, but it takes time, patience, and consistent care. Over the next few days, James continued to create small routines that would help Emma feel secure. He made her favorite oatmeal in the mornings, played soft music in the evenings, and read her bedtime stories, all while giving her space to feel comfortable. Slowly, she began to allow herself to speak in short, hesitant phrases. Each word was precious, each sound a victory over the silence she had carried for so long. One evening, as they sat by the window watching the city lights, Emma finally asked James a question. "Will you always stay?" James felt tears sting his eyes. "Yes, Emma. I'll always stay. You won't ever be alone." In that moment, he realized something profound. Healing is not just about overcoming grief or pain, it's about showing up, being present, and proving that love and care can exist even after tragedy. Emma's tiny hand in his was proof that broken hearts can begin to mend when they are treated with patience and understanding. James also began to reflect on his own past, on the moments when grief had threatened to consume him entirely. He thought about Lily, her laughter and warmth, and the void left behind. And yet, in caring for Emma, he discovered a new purpose, a chance to protect, nurture, and heal, not just her, but also himself. The next morning, James prepared breakfast as usual. Emma cautiously approached the table, her trust growing slowly. She began to eat without hesitation this time, and when she looked up at him with a faint smile, James felt a sense of hope he hadn't experienced in years. Even small gestures, like sharing a meal or completing a puzzle together, became milestones in Emma's journey toward healing. And for James, each smile and tentative word brought a sense of redemption, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, life could offer second chances even after unimaginable loss. As night fell once more, James sat beside Emma as she drifted into sleep. He gently stroked her hair and whispered, "You're safe here, Emma. Always." He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be moments of fear, resistance, and tears, but he was ready to face them all, with patience and unwavering care. In the quiet apartment, filled with the soft glow of the lamp and the faint hum of the city, two hearts, both wounded, both scarred, continued to find solace in each other. Their bond, fragile yet growing, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of empathy. Emma's story, like James, was marked by loss, fear, and uncertainty. But in the small, seemingly ordinary moments, sharing a meal, solving a puzzle, reading a story, he saw glimmers of hope. And with each day, the weight of their pasts grew lighter, replaced by the fragile promise of connection and love. Another engagement moment. If you're following Emma and James' journey, remember to like this video, subscribe for daily emotional storytelling, and comment below telling me your thoughts and which country you're watching from. Your messages mean a lot and keep these stories alive. As the chapter closes, we leave James and Emma on the cusp of a slow transformation, a journey from fear to trust, from solitude to companionship, and from pain to the first hints of hope. They had begun to discover that even in a world filled with shadows, moments of light could still appear, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Tomorrow, the challenges will continue, and the layers of Emma's past will gradually surface. But for now, in this quiet apartment, with the city lights glowing softly outside, two souls continue to heal together, one gentle day at a time. The days were slowly changing in James' small apartment. The heavy weight of silence that had hung over Emma was beginning to lift, ever so slightly. She still spoke very little, but there were moments, tiny, almost imperceptible moments, when she looked up at James and allowed herself to smile. Those moments, brief as they were, filled James' heart with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. That morning, James decided to make breakfast a little more special. He cooked warm pancakes with syrup and a few slices of fresh fruit. As he carried the plate to the table, Emma hesitated in the doorway, her eyes wide but curious. She didn't move forward immediately. James knelt down to her level. "You don't have to come closer if you're not ready," he said softly. "I just wanted you to have something you like." She looked at the food, then back at him, and slowly, tentatively, she stepped forward. That alone was a small victory. She sat down at the table and began to eat, her movements cautious but deliberate. For the first time, James realized that she was beginning to trust him, not completely, but enough to let him care for her in a small, meaningful way. After breakfast, James suggested they go to the park. The morning sun had broken through the clouds, and the world outside seemed brighter than it had in days. Emma looked hesitant at first, but she didn't resist when he gently took her hand. As they walked along the path lined with trees and flowers, James tried to engage her in conversation. "Do you like this park?" he asked. She nodded slightly, still quiet. But when a group of children ran past, laughing and playing, she pointed to a swing and whispered, "I want to try." James smiled. "Of course. Let's go." As Emma climbed onto the swing, James pushed gently. The wind blew through her hair, and for the first time, she laughed, a soft, delicate sound, but a real laugh. James felt tears prick his eyes. That single sound, the faint ray of joy breaking through the clouds of her past, was everything he had hoped for. They spent the morning in the park, walking slowly, letting Emma explore at her own pace. James noticed the small ways she was opening up, the way she pointed to flowers, how she occasionally looked up at him for reassurance, how she began to speak in short sentences. By midday, they returned to the apartment. Emma was tired but calm. She sat at the small table, coloring in a book while James prepared a light lunch. He watched her quietly, marveling at how far she had come in just a few days. Here's a great moment to connect with all of you watching. If this story is making your heart feel something, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for daily emotional stories ***, and comment below telling me which country you're watching from. I love seeing all your messages and sharing these stories with people everywhere. After lunch, James suggested they do something fun indoors. He brought out a small puzzle and a few building blocks. Emma was hesitant at first, but as he guided her hands, she began to build small towers. With each block stacked carefully on top of another, her confidence grew, and a small smile appeared on her face. James felt a surge of hope. It wasn't just about the activities, it was about trust. Emma was learning, slowly, that she could be safe, that she could enjoy simple pleasures, and that someone genuinely cared for her well-being. As the day turned to evening, James noticed Emma staring at the window again, lost in thought. He quietly joined her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, I remember my old home." James nodded, understanding. "It's okay to remember," he said softly. "It's okay to feel sad. But you're safe here now. I'll protect you, always." Emma's small hand reached for his again, and she squeezed lightly. It was a gesture filled with both trust and fear, but it was meaningful. James realized that healing was not a straight path. It came in moments like this, in tiny gestures and quiet acknowledgments. That night, James prepared a small dinner and placed it in front of her. They ate quietly, and for the first time, Emma asked a question. "Will you stay tomorrow too?" James smiled, feeling his chest tighten with emotion. "Yes, Emma. I'll stay. I promise. You won't ever be alone." As they finished eating, James suggested a small bedtime story. He read to her from a book filled with gentle tales of friendship and kindness. Emma listened quietly, occasionally glancing up at him. He noticed the faint curve of a smile when he read certain passages. That smile, small as it was, filled James' heart with hope and a sense of purpose he hadn't known since losing Lily. Later, as Emma drifted into sleep, James sat in the dim light of the apartment, reflecting on the day. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, moments of hesitation, perhaps even tears. But he also knew that the small victories of today, her laughter, her trust, her questions, were signs that healing was beginning. James thought about Lily again, about the moments he had lost, and the grief that still lingered. He realized that the pain of the past did not have to define the present. By being there for Emma, he was not only giving her safety and care, but he was also finding a path toward his own healing. The night was quiet, save for the soft breathing of Emma in her small bed. James whispered to himself, "You're safe, Emma. Always." He knew that even as darkness lingered in the shadows of her past, a faint ray of light had begun to shine, a light of trust, hope, and the possibility of joy. The chapter closes with James sitting silently, watching over Emma. They had faced the first real hurdles of fear and mistrust together, and for the first time, both of them could sense the beginning of something new. Even in a world that had been cruel and lonely, James realized that small acts of care and patience could create moments of light. Emma's laughter, her tentative smiles, her trust, they were fragile, yes, but they were the first rays of hope after long nights of darkness. And in that small, quiet apartment, amidst the soft glow of the lamp and the faint hum of the city outside, James and Emma continued their journey, a journey from fear to trust, from silence to connection, and from pain to the first whispers of joy. The morning sunlight streamed softly through the curtains, painting golden streaks across the small apartment. James stirred from sleep and glanced at Emma, who was still curled beneath the blanket, her little face peaceful and calm. He couldn't help but smile. These days, her presence filled the apartment with a warmth he hadn't known in years, a quiet joy that seemed almost magical. After a simple breakfast, James helped Emma get ready for the day. Her laughter, soft and shy, echoed around the kitchen as she sipped her milk. For the first time, she seemed relaxed enough to smile freely, no longer guarded by fear. James felt a gentle ache in his chest, a mix of love, protection, and a longing for something more. As he opened the door to step outside, he froze. A sleek black car was parked outside, and a well-dressed man in his late 30s stepped forward with a calm yet commanding presence. The man's eyes softened as he approached. "James," the man said, his voice steady yet warm. James straightened. "Yes, that's me." The man smiled gently. "I hear you've been taking care of my daughter." James blinked, his heart skipping a beat. "Your daughter?" "Yes," the man said. "Her name is Emma. She ran away from home, and I was worried. I never expected her to find someone like you, someone who would care so deeply." Emma peeked out from the hallway. Her eyes widened as she recognized the man, but instead of fear, there was a flicker of curiosity. "Daddy," she whispered softly. The man knelt to her level. "Emma, I've been looking for you. Are you okay?" Emma hesitated, then glanced at James. In that instant, she realized something. James had been her anchor, her protector, her comfort, her safe place in a world that had been cold and uncertain. Slowly, she stepped forward and held his hand, looking up at him with trust and gratitude. James knelt beside her, holding her small hands in his. "You're safe," he whispered. "Always." The man extended his hand to James. "I can't thank you enough," he said. "What you've done for Emma, it's beyond words. You've given her hope, love, and safety." James shook his head. "I didn't do it for thanks. I knew she needed someone." "That's exactly why you're remarkable," the man said. "Emma has told me about you. She trusts you. You've become a part of her life, and now, you've become a part of ours." Emma looked up at James, her voice soft. I love you, James." The words hung in the morning air, and James felt a rush of emotion that left him momentarily speechless. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her as if he could shield her from all the world's pain. Here's a moment for all of you watching. If this story has touched your heart, hit the like button, subscribe for daily emotional stories, and comment below telling me which country you're watching from. Your messages keep these stories alive. James lifted his eyes to meet Emma's father, who nodded warmly. "I can see why she's so happy with you. You've given her something no one else could, pure love, care, and patience." James swallowed hard, his throat tight. I just want her to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted." Emma's father smiled. "Then I think you already have my gratitude and my blessing. You're a part of our family now, James, in every way that matters." Later that afternoon, James took Emma to the park once more. The sun was warm, casting a golden glow over the grass and flowers. Emma laughed freely as James pushed her gently on the swing. Her laughter carried through the air, unguarded and joyful. James felt tears prick his eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of love and completeness he felt in that moment. As the day went on, they wandered to a quiet spot near a small fountain. Emma sat on a bench, tracing patterns on the worn wood, while James sat beside her. There was a stillness between them, a shared understanding that words weren't always necessary. James finally spoke softly. "Emma, I promise I'll always be here for you. Through every storm, every tear, every laugh. You're my family now." She turned to him, eyes glistening. "And you're my safe place." In that moment, the world outside seemed to fade. Time slowed, and all that existed was the bond they had built, the fragile, beautiful connection that had grown from trust, patience, and care. Even as the evening approached, the warmth of the sun lingered, casting soft light on their faces. James noticed Emma's tiny hand reach for his, and without hesitation, he intertwined his fingers with hers. It was simple, yet profoundly intimate, a silent promise that they would face the world together. As night fell, James prepared a small dinner, and Emma helped him set the table. Their laughter mingled with the sounds of the city outside, and for the first time, James felt a sense of home not just in the apartment, but in the hearts that now trusted him completely. After dinner, James tucked Emma into bed. She rested her head on his shoulder for a moment, a small smile gracing her lips. "Good night, James," she whispered. "Good night, Emma," he replied softly. "Sleep peacefully. Always remember you're loved." He stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. A feeling of completeness settled over him, a sense that life, with all its twists and heartbreaks, had finally led him to a moment of pure love, connection, and fulfillment. James thought about Lily for a brief moment, then allowed himself to focus on the present, the miracle that Emma had become in his life, and the quiet joy of having someone to share love with again. He realized that sometimes, the greatest blessings come from the most unexpected moments, the storms that seemed cruel at the time, the lonely nights, the heartbreak, all leading to a love that healed the soul. Emma stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. James leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I love you, Emma," he whispered. More than words could ever say. And in the quiet apartment, under the soft glow of the moonlight, a small, fragile family found their forever. The girl who had been lost, the man who had been broken, and the promise of love that would never let go, they had found each other. Final engagement prompt: if this story touched your heart, smash that like button, subscribe for daily emotional stories, and comment below telling me your country. Your messages mean the world. James knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but he also knew that nothing could break the bond they now shared. From fear to trust, from pain to love, their journey had reached a beautiful, heart-touching conclusion. Two souls, once lost, now intertwined. Two hearts, once heavy with grief, now filled with warmth and love. And in the quiet, glowing apartment, the story of loss, hope, and romance finally found its forever happy ending.